What I find fascinating is at the beginning of the 20th century, art was really about, and modern artists took it as their kind of a given, that they were not following a tradition, they were creating something new. And it was how could we reinvent what exists? And I think they're very basic facts of what sculpture had been for centuries or millennia. It had been about mass, it had been about gravity, and it had been about a kind of the presence, usually figurative, of a kind of a volumetric, massive object that responds to gravity the way human beings respond to gravity. And I think both of these artists ask questions about gravity, they ask questions about mass, and about space, and they were not working together, they didn't know each other, and they came up with totally different solutions, but solutions that speak to each other.
For me, the resolution of the whole thing becomes walking into the show and seeing that they were both trying to work out these questions. How do you capture space? What's the formality of capturing space? And they each have totally different vocabularies of how to do that. How do you present the sensation of a volume without literally delineating it?
There's also a kind of formal, technical aspect that I think comes out in the exhibition, which also has to do with innovation of early 20th century sculpture, and that is the breakdown of media as limitations of what an artist does. Even artists who did everything, like Leonardo da Vinci, you break it down, or Michelangelo was a sculptor and he was a painter. For Calder and Smith, as I see it, and Smith wrote about this, it was central to his intention for his work. He wanted to deny the idea of painting, drawing, sculpture. He wanted to combine them, and in his words, into something that would beat either one. And so you see Smith painting and sculpting in the same work. You see Smith drawing and making sculpture in the same work. And you see Calder doing these things. That's one of the things I've learned from the exhibition, seeing Calder afresh.
Yeah, I think another almost invisible connection between them is that in the mid-century, Calder's mobiles had a huge effect on musical composers like John Cage, and also on the Ab X movement, which got denied by critics and so on. But Calder is about gesture in space. And if you think about Pollock, you think about de Kooning, you think about Franz Klein, you think about these great guys, the actions of their physicality in space are the documents of the paintings. And Calder's work informed that.
Smith, when he discovered spray painting, I think it was in the mid-50s when industrial spray paint was invented, found a way to create the opposite of what he had been doing with sculpture that was inclusive of painting. He created paintings that were inclusive of sculpture, and by the absence of the sculpture. And that's why in the exhibition I love the pair of the red, basically red untitled spray painting of David Smith with white ordinary, the Calder mobile. To me, they have such a dynamic dialogue of absence and presence of an object, and that how white functions for our visual kind of understanding. We think of white often in art as a void, and Smith uses it as a void. It's an absent object. He's put steel on the canvas, sprayed it, and removed it, and what we're left with is an image that we recognize as sculptural, but it's not there. The Calder is there, yet it's white, so it is an actual representation of this idea we have of a void. Again, as a viewer, I see that piece as so vibrating with this kind of resonance of absence and presence because of the white and black circles.
When I arrived here and seeing the blue and black painting in the context of Calder's blue panel from 1936, it was great to see it because Calder's concept is, yes, it's a sculpture suspended on the wall, but Calder's concept is it's a two-dimensional painting that changes as you view it. The color flashes, the form flashes, it's changeable, and you have a different experience over time. And seeing them together was really, really insightful.
And the other thing that I wanted to talk about is gravity, because I think that was one of the principles that they both rebelled against, and they both actually wanted to deny it. What I see, and Smith has denial of gravity is through this kind of almost magical way that he's able to always create, no matter how many tons his sculpture weighs, this sense of uplift. We know that the force of nature is down, and yet with a huge piece, heavy piece like Zig 1, as you stand in front of it, you see this suspended piece of plate of steel just kind of floating in space. So the energy of Smith defies gravity by going up. I feel Calder understood the down, and the mobiles hang down. They're being pulled down by gravity, and they refuse because they seem weightless. So they're both creating a sense of weightlessness, but Calder's creating it from the top down, and Smith's creating it from the bottom up. And that's where I love this, the standing mobile with Zig 1, because that piece, the mobile element, rests down. It has that downward thing, yet it has weightlessness. The Smith has this kind of force of gravity, and it's lifting itself up.